The money her mother counted with trembling, whiskey-stained fingers was exactly $43. And that was the price Maeve Dalton learned she was worth on a scorching afternoon in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in 1878. She stood in the dusty parlor of their ramshackle house on the edge of town, watching through eyes that refused to cry as her mother pocketed the bills from the leering man in the stained bowler hat, a saloon owner named Dutch who ran the seediest establishment on Silver Avenue. Maeve was 19 years old, and she had always known her mother valued liquor more than her own daughter, but knowing it and experiencing it were two entirely different things. The transaction happened quickly. Her mother's slurred words about how Maeve would work off her debt at the saloon, how it was for the best, how they needed the money. Dutch grabbed Maeve's arm with fingers that felt like iron bands, and she was pulled from the only home she had ever known, worthless as it was. The walk to the saloon felt like a death march. Maeve kept her head high despite the shame burning through her chest, despite the way Dutch's grip bruised her arm. She would not give her mother the satisfaction of seeing her break. The streets of Albuquerque were busy with the late afternoon crowd, merchants closing their shops, cowboys riding through town, families heading home for supper. No one looked twice at a man dragging a young woman toward the saloon district. Maeve supposed that said everything about the world she lived in. Dutch shoved her through the back entrance of the Silver Snake Saloon, past the kitchen where the air reeked of old grease and spilled beer, and into a narrow hallway lined with doors. "You will work the floor," he said, his breath hot and foul against her face. "Serve drinks, smile pretty, and if a customer wants more, you will oblige. You understand me, girl?" Maeve jerked her arm free and stepped back, her spine hitting the wall. "My mother said I would work off a debt." "She said nothing about that." Dutch laughed, a sound like gravel in a bucket. "Your mama knew exactly what she was selling you for. You think $43 buys a simple barmaid. You are mine now, and you will do as I say." Before Maeve could respond, before she could process the full horror of what her mother had truly done, a voice cut through the dim hallway like a knife. "I believe the lady said no." Both Maeve and Dutch turned. Standing at the end of the hallway, backlit by the fading sunlight from the rear entrance, was a man Maeve had never seen before. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the lean build of someone who spent his life working hard. He wore dusty trail clothes, a worn brown Stetson pushed back on his head, and a gun belt that sat low on his hips. His face was young but weathered, maybe 25 or 26, with strong features and eyes that looked almost gray in the shadowed hallway. "This does not concern you, Quinn," Dutch said, his voice tight with anger. "The girl is mine. I paid for her fair and square." "People are not property," the man said, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "Not anymore. War settled that." Dutch's hand moved toward his own weapon, but the stranger was faster. His revolver was out of its holster before Dutch could even touch his gun, the barrel pointed steady at the saloon owner's chest. "I would not do that if I were you." Maeve pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She had no idea who this stranger was or why he was helping her, but she knew enough about men like Dutch to know this situation could turn deadly in a heartbeat. "You are making a big mistake, Quinn," Dutch said, slowly raising his hands. "That girl's mother sold her to me legal. I got witnesses. You are interfering with a business transaction. Then I will pay you back your money and the transaction is void," the stranger said. He reached into his pocket with his free hand and pulled out a small leather pouch. He tossed it to Dutch, who caught it reflexively. "That is $50, more than you paid. The girl comes with me and we forget this ever happened." Dutch weighed the pouch in his hand, his face contorting with indecision and greed. Finally, he spat on the floor. "Fine. Take the troublesome bitch. But if she comes back to Albuquerque, she is mine. You hear me? This debt is paid, but she is not welcome in this town." "She will not be back," the stranger said. He holstered his gun and gestured to Maeve. "Come on, miss. Let's get you out of here." Maeve did not need to be told twice. She hurried down the hallway, giving Dutch a wide berth, and followed the stranger out into the clean evening air. She took great gulping breaths, trying to steady herself, trying to understand what had just happened. The stranger led her around to the front of the building where two horses were tied at the hitching post, a large bay gelding and a smaller paint mare. "Can you ride?" he asked, his voice gentler now. "Yes," Maeve managed, though her voice shook. "Good." He untied the paint and handed her the reins. "We need to put some distance between us and this town before Dutch changes his mind or decides that $50 was not enough." Maeve mounted the horse, her hands trembling so badly she almost dropped the reins. The stranger swung up onto his bay with practiced ease, and they rode out of Albuquerque at a steady pace, not so fast as to draw attention but quick enough to put miles between them and the Silver Snake Saloon. The sun was setting, painting the New Mexico sky in shades of orange and purple, and Maeve rode in stunned silence, trying to process everything that had happened in the space of an hour. They rode for what felt like an eternity before the stranger finally slowed his horse and turned to look at her. "There is a creek about a mile north of here. We can make camp there for the night. You look like you could use some rest." "Who are you?" Maeve asked, the question that had been burning in her mind since the moment he appeared in that hallway. "Name is Cade Quinn," he said, tipping his hat slightly. "I am a ranch hand, work for the double bar spread about 30 miles west of here. I was in town picking up supplies when I saw Dutch dragging you into that saloon. You looked terrified, and I have seen what happens to women who end up in Dutch's place. I could not just walk away." "You did not even know me," Maeve said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did not need to know you to know what he was planning was wrong," Cade said simply. He urged his horse forward again. "Come on. Let's get that camp set up before it is full dark." The creek was exactly where Cade said it would be, a narrow ribbon of water flowing through a small grove of cottonwood trees. Cade helped Maeve dismount and then set about making camp with efficient, practiced movements. He unsaddled both horses, hobbled them near the water where they could drink and graze, and built a small fire. From his saddlebags he produced jerky, hardtack, and a tin of peaches, which he shared with Maeve without comment. She ate mechanically, still feeling like she was outside her own body, watching everything happen from a distance. When she finally found her voice again, the words tumbled out in a rush. "My mother sold me. She actually sold me like I was livestock or furniture. I knew she cared more about her whiskey than she cared about me, but I never thought she would actually do something like that." Cade was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. "I am sorry that happened to you. No one deserves to be treated that way, especially not by their own blood." "I do not understand why you helped me," Maeve said, looking at him across the flames. "You spent $50 on a complete stranger. You could have been shot. Why would you do that?" Cade met her eyes, and in the firelight they looked more gold than gray. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because I was raised to believe that family means something, that you protect people who cannot protect themselves. My parents taught me that, and even though they are both gone now, I still try to live by what they taught me." "What happened to them?" Maeve asked softly. "Fever took them both when I was 17, Cade said. "Left me and my younger sister on our own. I worked every job I could find to keep us fed and housed. When she turned 16, She married a good man, a merchant in Santa Fe. They have a baby now, a little boy named after our father. I see them when I can, but mostly I work the ranches, save my money, try to build something for myself. I am sorry about your parents, Maeve said, but it sounds like you gave your sister a real family, a real life. That is something to be proud of. You deserve a real family too, Cade said, his voice firm. Not someone who would sell you for drinking money. You deserve people who will stand by you, who will protect you, who will love you the way family is supposed to. The words hit Maeve like a physical blow, and suddenly the tears she had been holding back since the moment her mother counted those bills came flooding out. She sobbed into her hands, great heaving cries that shook her whole body, and she did not even hear Cade move around the fire. Then his arms were around her, strong and steady, and he held her while she cried out all the pain and betrayal and fear that had been building inside her. "It is all right," he murmured, his voice low and soothing. "Let it out. You are safe now. I promise you, you are safe." Eventually the tears subsided, leaving Maeve exhausted and hollow. Cade released her gently and went to his saddlebags, returning with a bedroll which he laid out near the fire. "You take this. I will keep watch tonight, make sure we are not followed." "You need to sleep too," Maeve protested weakly. "I will be fine," Cade assured her. "I have gone longer without sleep. You have been through hell today. Rest." Maeve was too tired to argue. She lay down on the bedroll, and despite everything, despite the fear and uncertainty of what would happen next, she fell asleep almost immediately. When she woke in the pale light of dawn, Cade was sitting by the fire, feeding it small sticks, his rifle across his lap. He looked tired but alert, and when he saw she was awake, he smiled. "Morning," he said. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected," Maeve admitted, sitting up. Her body ached from the emotional trauma of the previous day, but she felt clearer-headed, more able to think. "What happens now?" "Well," Cade said, pouring coffee from a battered pot into a tin cup and handing it to her. "I figure we have a few options. I can take you to Santa Fe to my sister and her husband. They are good people, they would help you get on your feet, or I can take you back to the Double Bar Ranch. The owner, Mr. Harrison, he and his wife are decent folks. They might have work for you, a place to stay. Or if you have somewhere else you want to go, somewhere you have people, I can help you get there." Maeve wrapped her hands around the warm cup, thinking. She had no people, no one who cared whether she lived or died. Her father had abandoned them when she was 3, and her mother had just proven exactly what Maeve meant to her. "I do not have anywhere else," she said quietly. "No one else." "Then come to the Double Bar," Cade said. "Mrs. Harrison is always looking for help with the house and the cooking. She is getting older and the work is hard. I know she would appreciate an extra pair of hands. The pay is not much, but room and board are included and you would be safe. The ranch is a good place." "Why are you doing all this?" Maeve asked, searching his face. "You already saved me, paid my way out of that horrible situation. You do not owe me anything more." Cade was quiet for a moment, then said, "Maybe I see something of my sister in you. Maybe I just think everyone deserves a chance at a decent life. Does it matter?" "I suppose not," Maeve said. She took a sip of the coffee, which was strong and bitter and perfect. "All right. I will go to the Double Bar Ranch. Thank you, Cade. I do not know how I will ever repay you for your kindness." "Do not need repaying," Cade said, standing and brushing off his pants. "Just promise me you will take this chance and make something of it. That is payment enough." They broke camp and rode west, following trails that Cade knew like the back of his hand. The landscape was harsh and beautiful, all red rock and scrubby plants and endless sky. They rode through the morning and into the afternoon, stopping only briefly to rest the horses and eat a quick meal. Cade told her about the Double Bar, about the work he did there breaking horses and mending fences, about the other ranch hands who were rough around the edges but good men at their core. He told her about Mrs. Harrison's cooking, which he claimed was the best in 3 territories, and about Mr. Harrison's prize bull, which had won ribbons at the territorial fair. Maeve found herself relaxing as they rode, found herself almost smiling at Cade's stories. He had a way of talking that made everything seem manageable, made her believe that maybe there was a life waiting for her beyond the pain of what her mother had done. She studied him when he was not looking, taking in the strong line of his jaw, the way his hands sat easy on the reins, the way he scanned their surroundings constantly, always alert. He was handsome in a rugged, practical way, and there was a kindness in him that she had rarely encountered in her life. They reached the double bar just as the sun was starting its descent toward the horizon. The ranch was sprawling with a large main house, a barn, several outbuildings and corrals that held horses and cattle. Smoke rose from the chimney of the main house, and Maeve could see people moving around, going about their evening chores. Cade led her straight to the main house and dismounted, helping her down from the paint. "Wait here," he said. "Let me talk to Mrs. Harrison first." He disappeared inside, and Maeve stood awkwardly by the horses, very aware that she was dusty and rumpled from 2 days of travel, that she probably looked like exactly what she was, someone with nowhere else to go. But before she could spiral too deep into her anxiety, the door opened, and a woman emerged with Cade. Mrs. Harrison was probably in her late 50s, with silver-streaked brown hair pulled back in a bun and a round, kind face. She wore a simple calico dress and an apron, and her eyes were sharp but warm as she looked Maeve up and down. "So you are the young lady Cade rescued from that terrible situation in Albuquerque," she said, her voice brisk but not unkind. "Well, you are welcome here, Miss Dalton. Cade tells me you are looking for work and a place to stay." "Yes, madam," Maeve said, finding her voice. "I am willing to work hard. I can cook and clean, and so I will earn my keep, I promise." "I am sure you will," Mrs. Harrison said. She gestured toward the house. "Come inside. You look exhausted. We will get you fed and settled, and we can discuss the details of your employment in the morning. Cade, see to the horses and then come in for supper." "Yes, madam," Cade said, tipping his hat. He caught Maeve's eye and gave her an encouraging nod before leading the horses toward the barn. Mrs. Harrison ushered Maeve inside, into a large kitchen that was warm and smelled of baking bread and roasting meat. A younger woman, probably in her early 30s, was stirring something on the stove. "This is my daughter-in-law, Sarah," Mrs. Harrison said. "Sarah, this is Maeve Dalton. She will be helping us around the house." Sarah turned and smiled, her expression genuinely friendly. "Welcome, Maeve. Lord knows we can use the help. This place gets bigger every year, or maybe we just get older and slower." Over the next hour, Maeve was fed a hearty meal of roast beef, potatoes, and fresh bread, shown to a small but clean room off the back of the house that would be hers, and given a basin of warm water to wash up. It was more kindness than she had experienced in her entire life, and she found herself blinking back tears as she scrubbed the trail dust from her face and arms. When she returned to the kitchen, several men had gathered around the large table for supper. Mr. Harrison was a barrel-chested man with a graying beard and laugh lines around his eyes. His son, Thomas, resembled him strongly and had his arm around Sarah's waist as she served the food. There were 3 other ranch hands, all of whom nodded politely to Maeve, but seemed more interested in their dinner than in making conversation. And there was Cade, sitting at the far end of the table, looking more relaxed than she had seen him yet. The meal was lively, with the men discussing the work that needed to be done the next day, debating the best way to fix a section of broken fence, and teasing each other good-naturedly. Maeve ate quietly, still feeling like an outsider, but no one made her feel unwelcome. After dinner, the men dispersed to the bunkhouse while Mrs. Harrison, Sarah, and Maeve cleaned up the kitchen. "Cade told me what your mother did," Mrs. Harrison said as they washed dishes. "That is a terrible thing, and I am sorry you had to experience it, but you are safe here, Maeve. On this ranch, we take care of our own, and as of today, you are one of ours." Maeve's throat tightened. "Thank you, Mrs. Harrison. I will not let you down." "I know you will not," Mrs. Harrison said firmly. "Now you have had a long few days. Go on to bed. Tomorrow we will start fresh." Maeve lay in her small room that night, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt something that might have been hope. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Maeve woke before dawn to help Mrs. Harrison and Sarah prepare breakfast for the ranch hands. After the men ate and headed out to their work, she cleaned the kitchen, did laundry, helped with the baking and cooking for the midday and evening meals, mended clothes, and did whatever other tasks needed doing. The work was hard and the days were long, but it was honest work, and she was treated with respect and kindness. Cade was often around the main house, either bringing fresh eggs from the chicken coop, hauling water, or repairing something that had broken. He always had a smile and a kind word for Maeve, and she found herself looking forward to seeing him, to the brief conversations they would have while she was kneading bread or hanging laundry. He told her more about his sister, about growing up in a small farming community in Kansas before his family moved west, about his dreams of one day owning his own small ranch. She told him about the few happy memories she had from childhood, before her father left and her mother turned to the bottle, about the books she had loved to read when she could get her hands on them, about how she had always dreamed of seeing the ocean. "I have never seen the ocean either," Cade admitted one afternoon while he was fixing a loose board on the porch and Maeve was shelling peas. "But I would like to someday. Maybe when I have saved enough money, I will take a trip west to California, see the Pacific." "That sounds wonderful," Maeve said wistfully. "I cannot imagine that much water going on forever." "Maybe one day you will see it too," Cade said, looking at her with an expression she could not quite read. As the weeks passed, Maeve realized she was developing feelings for Cade that went beyond gratitude. It was in the way her heart sped up when she saw him riding in from the range, in the way she found excuses to be where he was, in the way she lay awake at night thinking about his smile and the sound of his laugh. She tried to tell herself it was foolish, that a man like Cade, who was good and kind and strong, would never be interested in someone like her, someone whose own mother had sold her. But the feelings persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. One evening in early autumn, about 2 months after Maeve had arrived at the double bar, there was a dance in the nearby town of Las Lunas. Mrs. Harrison insisted that everyone from the ranch attend, including Maeve. "You have been working yourself to the bone, girl," she said when Maeve tried to protest. "You deserve a night of fun. Besides, Sarah and I could use your help getting ready, and you know these men will not dance with us old ladies all night." So Maeve found herself borrowing a dress from Sarah, a pretty blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes, and riding into Las Lunas with the rest of the ranch folk. The dance was held in the town hall, a large wooden building that had been decorated with bunting and lanterns. A fiddle band played lively music, and the floor was crowded with people Maeve did not know, all of them laughing and dancing and having a wonderful time. Maeve stood awkwardly by the refreshment table, watching the dancers and trying not to feel out of place. Then Cade appeared at her elbow, looking unfairly handsome in a clean shirt and vest. "Would you like to dance?" he asked, offering his hand. Maeve's heart jumped into her throat. "I am not very good," she warned. "Neither am I," Cade said with a grin, "but we can fumble through it together." He led her onto the floor and they joined the other couples in a lively reel. Cade was right. He was not a particularly skilled dancer, but he was enthusiastic and made Maeve laugh when he spun her too fast and nearly sent them both crashing into another couple. They danced through several songs, and then when a slower waltz began, Cade pulled her closer, his hand warm on her waist. "I am glad you came tonight," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear over the music. "Me too," Maeve said, hardly daring to breathe, very aware of how close they were, of the way his eyes were fixed on her face. "Maeve," he started, then hesitated. "I know you have been through a lot. I know you might not be thinking about this kind of thing. But I want you to know that I care about you, more than I probably should, considering we have only known each other a couple of months, but I cannot help it. You are smart and kind and strong, and I think about you all the time." Maeve felt like her heart might burst right out of her chest. "I think about you too," she admitted, her voice shaking. "All the time. I kept telling myself I was being foolish, that you could not possibly feel the same way, but Cade, I care about you so much." The smile that broke across Cade's face was brighter than any of the lanterns lighting the hall. "Can I court you properly then? Take you to church socials and dances, go on walks, all those things courting couples do?" "Yes," Maeve said, feeling tears prick her eyes, but this time they were happy tears. "Yes, I would like that very much." Cade spun her around the floor, both of them grinning like fools, and Maeve thought that maybe, just maybe, good things could happen to people like her after all. The courtship that followed was everything Maeve had never dared to dream of. Cade was attentive and respectful, always asking before he took her hand, always making sure she was comfortable. They went on long walks around the ranch in the evenings after the work was done, talking about everything and nothing. He brought her wildflowers he picked out on the range, and she baked his favorite apple pie. On Sundays, they went to the small church in Las Lunas together, sitting side by side in the pews, and afterward they would have picnics by the creek. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison approved wholeheartedly, as did Sarah and Thomas. "Cade is a good man," Mrs. Harrison told Maeve one day while they were canning vegetables. "One of the best I have ever known. You two are good for each other." "He saved my life," Maeve said quietly. "I do not just mean from Dutch. I mean from giving up, from believing I was worthless. He made me see that I deserve good things." "You do deserve good things," Mrs. Harrison said firmly, "and I am glad you are finally starting to believe it." As autumn turned to winter, Cade's courtship became more serious. He talked about the future, about the piece of land he had been saving up to buy, about the house he wanted to build, about the life he wanted to create. And always, he included Maeve in those plans, asking her opinion, making it clear that he envisioned her by his side. One cold December evening, Cade asked Maeve to take a walk with him despite the chill in the air. She bundled up in a shawl and they walked out past the barn, toward a small rise that overlooked the ranch. The sky was clear and full of stars, and their breath made clouds in the frigid air. "I have been thinking," Cade said, taking both of her hands in his. "I know we have not been courting for very long, only about 4 months, but Maeve, I am sure about you. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you always see the good in people, even after everything you have been through. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build that ranch with you, raise a family with you, grow old with you." He dropped to one knee, still holding her hands, and Maeve gasped. I do not have a fancy ring yet, but I will get you one, I promise. Maeve Dalton, will you marry me? Will you be my wife? Tears were streaming down Maeve's face, but she did not care. Yes, she said, her voice breaking with emotion. Yes, Cade, I will marry you. I love you too so much. Cade stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her for the first time, a soft, sweet kiss that promised a future full of love and happiness. When they finally broke apart, both of them were grinning like children on Christmas morning. They were married in February of 1879, in a small ceremony at the church in Las Lunas. Cade's sister, Emma, and her husband traveled from Santa Fe to attend, and Mr. and Mrs. Harrison hosted a celebration dinner at the ranch afterward. Maeve wore a simple white dress that Sarah had helped her sew, and Cade wore his best suit. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Maeve felt like her heart would explode with joy. Mrs. Harrison gave them a week off for a honeymoon, which they spent at a small hotel in Santa Fe, exploring the town and spending long hours just talking and being together. Cade finally bought Maeve a wedding ring, a simple gold band that she treasured more than any diamond. And at night, in the privacy of their hotel room, they came together as husband and wife, and Maeve discovered yet another way that Cade could make her feel cherished and loved. When they returned to the double bar, they moved into a small cabin on the edge of the ranch property that had previously been used for storage. Over the next few months, they fixed it up together, making it into a real home. Maeve sewed curtains and Cade built furniture, and slowly the cabin became a cozy refuge that was entirely theirs. Maeve continued to help Mrs. Harrison with the housework, but now she was saving the money she earned, adding it to the funds Cade was putting away. They had a plan. In another year, maybe two, they would have enough to buy their own small piece of land and start their own ranch. It would be modest at first, just a few cattle and horses, but it would be theirs, built on their own hard work and love. Life settled into a comfortable routine. Maeve woke each morning next to her husband, still marveling that this was her life now, that she had gone from being sold by her mother to being the wife of a good man who loved her. Cade worked long hours on the ranch, but he always came home to her, always greeted her with a kiss and a smile, always made her feel like the most important person in his world. In the spring of 1880, Maeve realized she was pregnant. She told Cade one evening after supper, watching his face carefully, suddenly nervous despite knowing he would be happy. His reaction did not disappoint. He let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her around the cabin before setting her down carefully, as if she might break. "We are going to have a baby," he said, his voice full of wonder. "Maeve, we are going to be parents. Are you happy?" she asked, even though she could see the answer written all over his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Cade said, pulling her close. "You have given me everything, Maeve. Everything I ever wanted. A home, a family, a life worth living. I love you so much." The pregnancy was not easy. Maeve was sick through most of the first few months, and as she grew larger, the summer heat made her uncomfortable and exhausted. But Cade was endlessly patient and supportive, taking over more of the household chores, making sure she rested, bringing her anything she needed. Mrs. Harrison and Sarah fussed over her like mother hens, sharing advice and old wives' tales and making sure she was eating enough. In November of 1880, on a chilly but clear day, Maeve went into labor. Sarah and Mrs. Harrison attended her, while Cade paced outside the cabin like a caged animal. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next morning, but finally, as the sun rose over the New Mexico desert, Maeve gave birth to a healthy baby boy. When Cade was finally allowed into the cabin and saw his son for the first time, he cried. He held the tiny, red-faced infant with shaking hands and looked at Maeve with such love and awe that she started crying too. "What should we name him?" Cade asked, his voice rough with emotion. "I was thinking about your father," Maeve said. "You told me his name was Charles." "What if we call him Charlie? Charlie Quinn," Cade said, testing the name. "I think my father would have been honored. Charlie it is." The first year of Charlie's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes, and the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that Maeve had never experienced before. But it was also filled with moments of pure joy. Charlie's first smile, his first laugh, the way he would reach for Cade when his father came home from work, the way he would curl up against Maeve's chest and fall asleep. Being a mother was the hardest thing Maeve had ever done, but it was also the most rewarding. Cade was a devoted father, always willing to walk the floor with a crying baby, always ready to play and make silly faces, always treating his son with endless patience and love. Watching him with Charlie, Maeve fell in love with her husband all over again. By the time Charlie was 2, Cade and Maeve had finally saved enough money to buy their own land. It was a modest plot, about 300 acres, with a natural spring and good grazing. It was located about 20 miles west of the Double Bar, close enough to visit but far enough to feel independent. Mr. Harrison helped them purchase their first small herd of cattle, and Cade built a simple but sturdy house with the help of his friends from the ranch. Moving to their own property felt like a new beginning. Maeve planted a vegetable garden and Cade built corrals and outbuildings. Charlie toddled around, getting into everything, and they got a dog, a mutt they named Scout, who became Charlie's devoted companion. The ranch was hard work, with Cade out from dawn until dusk tending to the cattle and horses, and Maeve busy with cooking, cleaning, caring for Charlie, and helping with whatever ranch work she could manage. But it was their work, their land, their life, and that made all the difference. In the spring of 1883, Maeve gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Clara. She had Cade's gray eyes and Maeve's dark hair, and from the moment she was born, she had her father wrapped around her tiny finger. Charlie was fascinated by his baby sister, always wanting to help feed her or rock her or bring her toys. The ranch prospered slowly but steadily. Cade's reputation as an honest rancher and skilled horseman grew, and he was able to sell his cattle and horses for fair prices. They were not wealthy by any means, but they were comfortable and, more importantly, they were happy. One evening in late summer of 1885, when Charlie was nearly 5 and Clara was 2, the family was sitting on the porch of their house, watching the sun set over the land they had worked so hard to build. Charlie was playing with Scout, and Clara was dozing on Maeve's lap. Cade had his arm around Maeve's shoulders and she leaned into him, feeling utterly content. "You ever think about that day in Albuquerque?" Cade asked quietly. "The day I found you, sometimes," Maeve admitted. "It feels like a lifetime ago, like it happened to a different person." "In a way, I suppose it did," Cade said. "You are not that scared girl anymore, Maeve. You are a wife, a mother, a rancher. You are strong and capable, and you have built this life with me." "We built it together," Maeve corrected. "And none of it would have been possible without you. You told me I deserved a real family, do you remember? That night by the creek after you saved me. You said I deserved people who would stand by me, who would protect me, who would love me the way family is supposed to." "I remember," Cade said. "You gave me that," Maeve said, her voice thick with emotion. "You gave me everything. This ranch, our children, a life I could never have imagined. But most of all, you gave me love. Real, unconditional love. You saw me at my lowest point and you still believed I was worth saving." "You were always worth saving," Cade said fiercely. "You were always worth everything, Maeve. I just hope I have made you as happy as you have made me." "Happier," Maeve said, tilting her face up to kiss him. "You have made me happier than I ever thought possible." As the years passed, the Quinn ranch continued to grow. Charlie grew into a strong, responsible boy who loved working alongside his father. Clara was clever and spirited, keeping her parents on their toes with her endless curiosity and boundless energy. In 1888, Maeve gave birth to their third child, another boy they named Samuel. 3 children felt like a full house, and Maeve and Cade agreed their family was complete. Cade's sister, Emma, and her family visited regularly, and the cousins grew up playing together during long summer visits. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison retired from active ranch management, turning the double bar over to Thomas and Sarah, and they visited the Quinn ranch often, delighting in watching the children grow. Mrs. Harrison always said that she knew from the moment she met Maeve that the girl was something special, and she was proud to have played a part in Maeve and Cade's story. Maeve never saw her mother again. She heard through the grapevine that the woman had died a few years after selling her daughter, drunk and alone in the same ramshackle house where Maeve had grown up. Maeve felt a pang of sadness when she heard the news, but it was distant, like mourning a stranger. The woman who had given birth to her had never been a real mother. Her real family was Cade and their children, the family they had built together from nothing. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1889, Cade took Maeve to the same spot overlooking their ranch where he had proposed. The children were spending the night with Thomas and Sarah at the double bar, giving them a rare evening alone. They sat on a blanket, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the stars come out. 10 years, Cade said, shaking his head. Feels like a lifetime and like yesterday all at once. It has been a good 10 years, Maeve said, leaning against him. The best of my life. Mine too, Cade said. He pulled a small wrapped package from his pocket and handed it to her. I got you something. Maeve unwrapped it carefully and gasped. Inside was a delicate silver locket on a chain. She opened it and found 2 tiny photographs inside, one of each of them taken shortly after their wedding, cut down to fit the locket. Cade, it is beautiful, she breathed. I wanted you to have something to mark the occasion, he said, helping her fasten it around her neck. Something to remind you of us, of what we have built together. I do not need reminding, Maeve said, touching the locket, but I will treasure this forever. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, then Cade said, I was thinking. Charlie is getting to an age where he is asking questions about family, about where people come from. He asked me the other day about your parents, about his grandparents on your side. I did not know what to tell him. Maeve took a deep breath. She had known this conversation would come eventually. Tell him the truth, she said. Tell him that my father left when I was young and my mother was not a kind woman. Tell him that you saved me from a bad situation and gave me a new life. He is old enough to understand at least the basics of it. Are you sure? Cade asked. I am sure, Maeve said. I do not want to lie to our children. I want them to know that families come in all forms, that sometimes you have to create your own family from the people who choose to love you. That is an important lesson. You are right, Cade said. As usual. He kissed her forehead. I love you, Maeve Quinn. I love the life we have built, and I love the woman you have become. I am so damn proud of you. I love you too, Maeve said. Thank you for seeing me, for saving me, for loving me. Thank you for giving me a real family. The Quinn Ranch thrived into the 1890s. The children grew older and more capable, each taking on more responsibilities around the ranch. Charlie showed a particular talent for working with horses, just like his father. Clara learned to read and loved books, and Maeve made sure she had access to as many as they could afford. Samuel was the baby, spoiled a bit by everyone but sweet-natured and helpful. In 1893, when a drought hit the region hard, the Quinns struggled along with their neighbors. But they had built their ranch wisely, with access to the spring that never fully dried up, and they managed to keep their herd alive through the difficult months. They shared water with neighbors who were less fortunate, and when the rains finally came, everyone remembered the Quinns' generosity. Maeve became known in the community as someone you could turn to for help. She organized church socials and charity drives, took in neighbors' children when illness struck a household, and always had a pot of stew or coffee on the stove for anyone who stopped by. She had been given so much kindness when she needed it most, and she spent the rest of her life paying that forward. In the spring of 1896, Charlie turned 16 and told his parents he wanted to start his own horse breeding operation on a corner of their property. Cade was immensely proud and helped his son build a small stable and corral. Watching Charlie work with the horses, seeing the care and skill he brought to the task, Cade often told Maeve that their son had inherited the best parts of both of them. Clara, at 13, announced that she wanted to be a teacher. Education for women was becoming more accessible, and Maeve and Cade encouraged her dreams wholeheartedly. They saved money to send her to a teaching college in Santa Fe when she was old enough, determined that their daughter would have every opportunity to pursue her goals. Samuel, at 8, was still young enough to just be a child, spending his days playing with Scout, helping his mother in the garden, and tagging along after his older siblings. He was the family clown, always making everyone laugh with his antics. As Maeve approached her 40th birthday in 1899, she sometimes found herself thinking about the scared 19-year-old girl who had been dragged into the Silver Snake Saloon 21 years earlier. That girl would never have believed that this life was possible, that she could be this happy, this loved, this complete. Every day, Maeve woke up grateful for the second chance she had been given, grateful for the cowboy who had seen her worth when she could not see it herself. One late autumn evening, the whole family gathered around the dinner table for a meal that had become a weekly tradition. Charlie was talking about a mare he was training. Clara was excitedly describing a book she had just finished, and Samuel was telling an elaborate story about something Scout had done that afternoon. Cade sat at the head of the table, occasionally interjecting with questions or comments, his face relaxed and happy. Maeve looked around at all of them, her heart so full she thought it might burst. This was what family was supposed to be. Not the blood ties that bound you to people who hurt you, but the love and commitment and shared experiences that built something real and lasting. This was what Cade had promised her all those years ago, what he had given her through his actions every single day since. A real family, a true home. After dinner, when the children had scattered to their evening activities and Maeve and Cade were cleaning up, he pulled her into his arms and held her close. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, because he always could tell when her mind was working. "Just how lucky I am," Maeve said, wrapping her arms around his waist. "How blessed. 20 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I would never know happiness or love. And then you walked into that hallway and changed everything." "You changed everything for me too," Cade said softly. "You gave me purpose, gave me a reason to build something lasting. You gave me these beautiful children and this life and every happiness I have ever known. We saved each other, Maeve." She tilted her face up to kiss him, still feeling that same spark she had felt the first time they danced together at the hall in Las Lunas. 20 years of marriage, 3 children, and countless hardships and triumphs later, she loved him more than ever. And from the way he held her, the way he looked at her, she knew he felt the same. The new century dawned in 1900, and with it came changes. Charlie married a sweet girl named Elizabeth from a neighboring ranch, and they started building their own home on the Quinn property. Clara left for teaching college in Santa Fe, writing long letters home about her studies and her dreams. Samuel grew taller and stronger, taking on more of the ranch work as Cade, now in his late 40s, started to slow down just a little. Maeve's hair was streaked with silver now, and she had laugh lines around her eyes and mouth, earned through years of smiling and joy. She and Cade still made time for their evening walks, still sat on the porch and watched the sunsets, still talked about their dreams and plans. They were grandparents now, with Charlie and Elizabeth's first baby, a boy named James, born in 1901. Holding her grandson for the first time, Maeve cried happy tears, marveling at how far she had come, how much her life had expanded from that terrible day in Albuquerque. As the years went on, the Quinn Ranch remained a center of family life. Holidays were huge affairs with children and grandchildren filling the house with noise and laughter. Clara came home from teaching to visit every summer, eventually bringing a young man named Robert whom she married in 1903. Samuel, when he turned 18 in 1906, announced he wanted to try his hand at ranching in Montana, seeking his own adventure. Maeve and Cade were sad to see him go but proud of his independence. Through it all, through the joys and the sorrows, the successes and the setbacks, Maeve and Cade remained each other's anchor. They had built something extraordinary from the ashes of Maeve's worst day, had created a legacy of love and family that would extend far beyond their own lives. On a warm evening in June of 1908, Maeve and Cade celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary. Their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a party that lasted well into the night. There were toasts and laughter and a cake that Clara had made, decorated with 30 candles. As Maeve and Cade blew out the candles together, she made a wish that they would have 30 more years together, though she knew that was asking a lot. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, Maeve and Cade walked out to their spot overlooking the ranch. The land stretched out before them, bathed in moonlight, peaceful and beautiful. This land, these buildings, the cattle and horses, all of it represented years of hard work and sacrifice. But more than that, it represented love, family, and the belief that people could overcome their pasts and build something beautiful. "You remember what you told me that first night?" Maeve asked, her hand in Cade's, "when we camped by the creek." "I remember everything about that night," Cade said. "You told me I deserved a real family," Maeve said. "You said I deserved people who would stand by me, who would protect me, who would love me the way family is supposed to." "And I meant every word," Cade said. "You gave me all of that and so much more," Maeve said, her voice breaking slightly with emotion. "You gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams. You loved me when I thought I was unlovable. You saw potential in me when all I saw was brokenness. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Cade Quinn." "And you are the best thing that ever happened to me, Maeve Quinn," Cade said, pulling her into his arms. "I loved you from almost the first moment I saw you. I loved your strength, your courage, your determination to survive despite everything. I have loved you every day since, and I will love you every day for the rest of my life." They stood there together under the stars, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a family and a life from nothing but love and determination. The girl who had been sold for drinking money was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth, who had raised children who knew theirs, who had created a legacy that would last for generations. And the cowboy who had told her she deserved a real family had kept his promise in every possible way, had loved her faithfully and completely, had given her everything he had promised and more. As they walked back to the house hand in hand, both of them knew they had been blessed beyond measure. They had taken the worst day of Maeve's life and transformed it into the beginning of the best life either of them could have imagined. They had created something beautiful from something terrible, had proved that love and kindness could triumph over cruelty and abandonment. Their story was not just about survival or rescue. It was about two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment, who had chosen each other every day since, who had built a life based on respect, trust, and an enduring love that had only grown stronger with time. It was about the family they had created together, not just their children and grandchildren, but the community they had built around them, the friends who were like family, the neighbors they had helped and who had helped them in return. Years later, when Maeve was an old woman sitting on that same porch with her great-grandchildren playing at her feet, she would tell them the story of how she met their great-grandfather. She would tell them about the worst day of her life and how it became the beginning of the best life she could have imagined. She would tell them that sometimes salvation comes from unexpected places, that family is not always about blood, and that love has the power to heal even the deepest wounds. And always, she would end the story the same way. Your great-grandfather told me I deserved a real family, and then he gave me one. He gave me all of you, and that is the greatest gift I have ever received. The ranch continued to thrive, passed down through generations of Quinns. Each one taught the values that Maeve and Cade had instilled: hard work, kindness, integrity, and above all, family. The little cabin where Maeve and Cade had first lived as newlyweds was preserved and became a place where family members would go to feel connected to their history, to remember the remarkable love story that had started it all. Maeve lived to see her children grow old, her grandchildren have children of their own, and her great-grandchildren take their first steps. She lived to see the new century bring changes she could never have imagined, but through it all, the constants remained: the land, the family, and the love that had built it all. When she finally passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 73 in 1913, surrounded by her family, her last conscious thought was of gratitude. Gratitude for the cowboy who had saved her, loved her, and given her a life beyond her wildest dreams. Gratitude for the family they had built together. Gratitude for every single day of the beautiful life they had shared. Cade followed her a year later, unable to live without his beloved wife by his side. They were buried together on a hill overlooking their ranch, under a simple headstone that read, "Cade and Maeve Quinn, together in life, together in eternity. They built a family on love." And that family continued for generations, each member carrying forward the legacy of the girl who had been sold for drinking money, and the cowboy who had told her she deserved better. Their love story became family legend, passed down through the years as a reminder that no matter how dark life might seem, there is always hope for redemption, for love, for a real family who will stand by you no matter what. The Quinn Ranch still stands today, a testament to what two people can build when they choose love, when they choose each other, when they choose to create rather than destroy. And somewhere, perhaps, two souls are still walking hand in hand across that land, still building that family, still proving that real love never truly ends.